A single dad mechanic knelt in the mud beside a stranger's broken tractor on the coldest night of the year, and he had no idea that the woman standing in front of him controlled a company worth $4 billion. She wore a plain gray jacket with no name on it. She did not tell him who she was. She just watched him work with tired eyes, the same way any exhausted mother would watch a man try to save her night. He fixed that tractor for free, because that is who he was. He never once imagined that by tomorrow afternoon his phone would ring and the woman on the other end would change his life and his daughter's life forever. Stay with me until the end, because the final call will leave you speechless. If you are watching this, comment below and tell me which state or country you are watching from tonight. I love seeing where this story reaches, and I read every single comment. Jake Coleman had grease under his fingernails that never seemed to wash out, no matter how hard he scrubbed. He owned a small mechanic shop on the edge of Millbrook, a quiet farming town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone, and where the biggest news of the week was usually about the weather or the high school football score. Jake was 34 years old, and he had been raising his daughter Lily alone for the past 3 years, ever since his wife passed away from a sudden illness that no one saw coming. He did not talk about it much. He simply woke up every morning, made Lily her cereal, dropped her off at school, and spent the rest of his day fixing whatever broken engine rolled into his shop. The shop was called Coleman Auto and Diesel, though the sign outside had faded so much that most people just called it Jake's place. It was not fancy. It had one lift, a row of old tool chests, and a small office with a space heater that rattled every time it turned on. But Jake was good at his job, maybe the best mechanic within 50 miles, and the farmers around Millbrook trusted him with everything from pickup trucks to combine harvesters. Jake had built the shop up slowly, piece by piece, since the day his father handed him the keys. His wife, Sarah, used to bring him lunch every single afternoon, sitting on an old stool near the office door while he ate a sandwich with grease still on his hands. She used to tease him about never fully cleaning up, saying the grease had become a permanent part of his skin. After she passed away, Jake kept that same stool in the same spot, though no one sat on it anymore. Lily sometimes climbed up on it after school, swinging her legs while she did her homework, and Jake liked to think that some small part of her mother still lingered in that quiet corner of the shop. Raising Lily alone had not been easy. There were nights when Jake sat in his truck outside the shop long after closing time, simply staring at the steering wheel, wondering if he was doing enough, wondering if he was failing her in ways he could not even see. He never let Lily witness those moments. In front of her, he was steady, patient, and endlessly encouraging, helping her with spelling homework at the kitchen table and teaching her how to identify different birds in the backyard on quiet Sunday mornings. But privately, the weight of being everything for one small child, provider, protector, teacher, and comforter pressed on him more than he ever admitted out loud. That particular evening in late October, the sky had turned the color of wet concrete, and a cold rain had been falling since noon. Jake was closing up the shop, wiping down his last wrench, and thinking about picking Lily up from her grandmother's house when he heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside. He looked up and saw a large black pickup truck pulling a flatbed trailer, and on that trailer sat a tractor, tilted slightly to one side with a flat tire and something clearly wrong with the front axle. A woman stepped out of the truck. She was maybe in her early 40s, wearing jeans, work boots, and a plain gray jacket zipped up to her chin. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail, and she looked exhausted. The kind of exhausted that comes from driving too many hours and dealing with too many problems in one day. She approached Jake with a polite but tired smile. "I am sorry to bother you this late," she said. "My name is Evelyn. I am trying to get this tractor to a property about 40 miles from here, and the trailer axle gave out about a mile up the road. A man at the gas station told me you were the only shop still open around this time, and that you actually knew what you were doing." Jake wiped his hands on a rag and walked over to inspect the trailer. "Well," he said, I do not know about being the only one who knows what he is doing, but I can take a look. It is getting dark, though, and this rain is not helping." "I understand if you cannot help tonight," Evelyn said. "I can find a hotel and come back in the morning." Jake glanced at his watch, then back at the trailer, then at the tired woman standing in front of him, soaked from the rain. Something about her exhaustion reminded him of the nights after his wife passed away, when he was running on empty and every stranger's kindness felt like a small miracle. He made a decision right there. "Pull it into the bay," he said. "I have got a heater in there, and Lily can wait a little longer at her grandmother's. Let us see what we are dealing with." Evelyn's expression softened in a way that suggested she had not expected such an easy yes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I really mean that." The rain hammered against the metal roof of the shop as Jake rolled a creeper under the trailer, the cold seeping through his jacket almost immediately. He clicked on his work light, and the beam cut through the dim shop, revealing exactly the kind of damage he had feared. The axle bearing had shattered into small metal fragments, scattered across the underside of the trailer frame like broken teeth. He reached up and touched the metal, feeling the heat still radiating from the friction that had built up over the miles. "This did not happen overnight," he called out to Evelyn, who stood nearby holding a flashlight steady for him. "Somebody either overloaded this trailer, or it has been dragging weight wrong for a long time." "I only just bought the tractor a few weeks ago," Evelyn admitted. "I hired a transport company to move it the first time, and I have been handling it myself since then. I suppose I have a lot to learn about hauling heavy equipment." Jake chuckled quietly from beneath the trailer. "Nothing wrong with learning as you go," he said. "Most of the best farmers around here started out making the exact same mistakes." He spent the next 2 hours under the trailer and around the tractor, discovering that the axle bearing had completely failed, likely from the tractor being loaded incorrectly, and that the tire itself was beyond repair. He had the parts in his shop, mostly because he kept an unusually well-stocked inventory for a small operation, a habit from years of never wanting to turn away a farmer in need during harvest season. While he worked, Evelyn stayed nearby, occasionally handing him tools when he asked, and asking simple questions about his shop and his town. "You have been doing this a long time," she said at one point, watching him tighten a bolt with practiced ease. "Since I was 17, Jake replied. "My father had this shop before me. I took over when he passed. It is not much, but it is honest work, and it lets me be close to my daughter." "You have a daughter?" Evelyn said, and something in her voice changed slightly, becoming warmer. "Lily. She is 7. Smartest kid I know, though I might be a little biased." Evelyn smiled, a real smile this time. "I have a daughter too," she said. "She is about to turn 8. Raising her has been the hardest and best thing I have ever done." They talked a little more as Jake worked, mostly about small things, the town, the weather, the difficulty of raising kids while running a business. Jake noticed that Evelyn never mentioned what she did for a living, and he did not ask, figuring it was not his business. He simply assumed she worked somewhere ordinary, maybe an office job in the city, someone driving out to visit family property with a tractor for some kind of farm project. By the time Jake finished the repair, it was nearly 9 at night. He tested the trailer, made sure everything held steady, and lowered the tractor gently to check the tires and alignment one more time. Everything looked solid. "That should get you where you need to go safely," he said, wiping his hands again. "I would still recommend having someone check the whole trailer frame soon, since that bearing failure put a lot of stress on the metal. But for tonight, you are good." Evelyn reached for her purse. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. Jake waved his hand. "Do not worry about it," he said. "It is late, you were stuck in the rain, and it did not take that long. Just get home safe." Evelyn stared at him for a moment. "I insist on paying you something. This is real work, and real work deserves real payment." "I appreciate that," Jake said. But I am not going to charge a woman extra for being stuck in the rain on a Tuesday night. Call it a good deed. Maybe it will bring me luck." Evelyn laughed softly, though there was something thoughtful behind her eyes. "You have no idea," she said quietly, almost to herself. Before she left, she asked if she could use his restroom, and while she was inside, Jake noticed a small folder on the passenger seat of her truck through the open door. He was not trying to look, but the corner of the folder had slid out, and it had a formal government-looking seal for a business filing along with several papers with numbers in the millions. He assumed it was some sort of loan document or a farm insurance form and thought little more of it. It was not his business, and he was not the type to pry into a stranger's affairs. When Evelyn came back out, she thanked him one more time, shook his hand firmly, and said, "You are going to hear from me again." She then climbed into her truck and drove off into the rainy night, her taillights disappearing down the long county road toward the highway. Jake locked up his shop, drove to his mother-in-law's house to pick up Lily, and did not think much more about the encounter that night. He assumed it was simply one of those small kindnesses that happen and disappear, forgotten within a week, much like helping change a flat tire for a stranger on the side of the road. The next morning came like any other. Jake made pancakes for Lily, packed her lunch, and dropped her off at school with a promise to pick her up right after soccer practice. He then opened his shop at 8 in the morning, expecting a normal day of oil changes and minor repairs. Around 11 in the morning, his cell phone rang, showing a number he did not recognize, an area code from somewhere far outside Ohio. He answered while wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Coleman Auto and Diesel, this is Jake." "Jake, hello, this is Evelyn, from last night, the woman with the tractor trailer." Jake smiled, recognizing the voice immediately. "Evelyn, hey, glad you made it home safe. Everything holding up all right with the trailer?" "Everything is perfect, thanks to you," she said. "Jake, I owe you an apology and an explanation." "An apology?" Jake said, confused. "For what?" "I was not fully honest with you last night," Evelyn said. "My full name is Evelyn Whitmore. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Agricultural Holdings." Jake paused, the name sounding vaguely familiar, though he could not immediately place it. "We are one of the largest agricultural equipment and land management companies in the country," Evelyn continued. "I was driving that tractor myself last night because I was personally inspecting rural properties for a new community farming initiative we are launching, something close to my heart, meant to help small family farms and small towns like yours access better equipment and better support. I travel without any staff sometimes, because I want to see how ordinary people are actually treated, not how they are treated when they know who I am." Jake sat down slowly on a stool near his workbench, still processing what he had just heard. "All right," he said carefully. "I appreciate you telling me, but I want you to know I would have helped you the same way no matter who you were." "That is exactly why I am calling you," Evelyn said, her voice warm but serious. "Jake, last night, you helped a stranger in the rain, refused payment, and treated me the same way you would treat any neighbor in trouble. You did not know I could write a check that would change your life, and you helped me anyway. That kind of character is rare, and it is exactly the kind of person our new initiative needs." Jake let out a breath, still stunned. "I am not sure I understand what you are asking," he said. Evelyn explained further. Her company was launching a program to support small, independent mechanic and repair shops across rural America, shops exactly like his, that served farmers and families who often had nowhere else to turn. She wanted to offer Jake a partnership contract, one that would provide funding to expand his shop, modernize his equipment, and even open a second location if he wanted, all while keeping full ownership and control in his own hands. In exchange, his shop would become a certified regional service center for Whitmore Agricultural Holdings equipment, guaranteeing him steady contracts for years to come. "This is not charity," Evelyn said firmly. "This is a business partnership. I do not build my company on charity. I build it on trust. And last night, you earned that trust without even knowing it." Jake sat in silence for a long moment, his mind racing through everything this could mean, not just for his shop, but for Lily, for her future, for the stability he had been quietly praying for since his wife passed away. "Evelyn," he finally said, his voice a little rough with emotion. "I do not know what to say." "Say yes," she replied gently. "Say yes, and let us build something good together." Over the following weeks, everything Evelyn promised began to unfold exactly as she described. A contract arrived, reviewed carefully by a local lawyer Jake trusted, and it was fair, generous, and completely legitimate. Within 2 months, Coleman Auto and Diesel expanded into the empty lot next door, adding 2 new service bays, updated diagnostic equipment, and even a small waiting area with real chairs instead of the old plastic ones that had been there since Jake's father owned the shop. Jake hired 2 additional mechanics from town, men who had been struggling to find steady work, giving them stable jobs with real benefits for the first time in years. But the part that meant the most to Jake had nothing to do with the shop at all. For the first time since his wife passed away, he felt like he could breathe, like the constant weight of worrying about money, about Lily's future, about whether he was doing enough as a single father, had finally eased just slightly. He was able to set aside savings for Lily's education, something he had not been able to do before, and he even started coaching her soccer team on weekends, no longer exhausted from working every single hour just to keep the lights on. Evelyn and Jake stayed in touch, their working relationship growing into a genuine friendship. She would occasionally bring her daughter along when she visited Millbrook to check on the regional service program, and the 2 girls, Lily and Evelyn's daughter, became fast friends, running around the shop parking lot while their parents talked business over coffee. One afternoon, several months later, Evelyn stopped by the shop unannounced, watching quietly as Jake helped a young mechanic diagnose a transmission problem, patiently explaining every step. When he finished, she smiled and said, "You know, that night in the rain, I almost did not stop at your shop. I saw the lights were about to go off, and I almost kept driving to find somewhere else." "What made you stop?" Jake asked. Evelyn shrugged. Something about the way the shop looked, tired but cared for, like someone poured everything they had into it. "I figured if a person took that much pride in an old building, they probably took the same pride in helping people." I was right. Jake smiled, glancing over at Lily, who was laughing with Evelyn's daughter near the old workbench where his father used to teach him how to change oil decades earlier. "Guess a little kindness in the rain went a long way," he said. "More than you know," Evelyn replied. "More than you will ever know." Word of what happened eventually spread through Millbrook, the way news always does in a small town, passed from one neighbor to another over coffee and church gatherings. People began to see Jake a little differently, not because he had suddenly become wealthy or important, but because his story reminded them of something they had almost forgotten, that decency still mattered and that it could still be rewarded in a world that often felt cold and transactional. Farmers who had known Jake since he was a boy started stopping by more often, not just for repairs, but simply to shake his hand and tell him how proud his father would have been. Jake never let the success change who he was. He still wore the same worn work boots, still answered his own phone every morning, and still refused to let Lily see him boasting about anything he had earned. Instead, he used the opportunity to teach her something far more valuable than money ever could. He wanted her to understand that helping someone should never depend on what they could offer in return, that real character showed itself most clearly in the moments when no one else was watching. One evening, as Jake tucked Lily into bed, she asked him a question that caught him completely off guard. "Daddy," she said, quietly staring up at the ceiling, "do you think the tractor lady would have given you all that if you had said no to helping her that night?" Jake thought about it for a long moment before answering. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "I do not think she would have. And that is exactly the point. I did not help her because I wanted something back. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Everything else was just a bonus we never expected. Lily nodded slowly, seeming to understand something far beyond her 7 years, and closed her eyes, drifting off to sleep with a small, satisfied smile on her face. Years later, Coleman Auto and Diesel became one of the most respected repair shops in the entire region, known not only for its skill, but for the values Jake instilled in every mechanic who walked through its doors. Whitmore Agricultural Holdings continued its rural partnership program, eventually helping dozens of small shops across the country, all inspired by one rainy night in Ohio when a tired stranger and an honest mechanic crossed paths by pure chance. And that is how one quiet act of kindness on a rainy Tuesday night, from a tired single father who asked for nothing in return, ended up changing not just his own life, but the future of an entire small town, one honest repair at a time. If this story moved you even a little, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and if you believe kindness always finds its way back, give this video a like before you go. Thank you for watching until the very end.